It's amazing that Abingdon Fire Company is at 100 years of service. It has been a heck of a ride. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
I'm Bill Dusa. I joined Abingdon Fire Company in 1985. I actually had been riding Abingdon's ambulance for a number of years. They had an ambulance at their House 3 down in Willoughby Beach, which meant that as it was coming out of the beach and they needed an ALS provider, they'd pick me up at Big Red and I'd jump on the ambulance. So I got to ride Abingdon's ambulance a lot before I became a member.
I'm Charlie Kranz. I first joined Abingdon Fire Company in 1981. I had a friend that was riding and I joined, and my uncle was a volunteer firefighter in New Jersey. So I thought it'd be interesting to try. Yeah, well, I was the oldest of my three brothers, so I joined first. And then my brother, my middle brother, he joined. My mom joined. And Mom joined and took EMT and IV tech, so she drove the ambulance, rode the ambulance a lot, and for quite a few years. My brother rode for a little while, and then he went in the Army and then came out and got a job in Baltimore City, and he just retired a few years ago, younger than me, but he retired as a city paramedic and an instructor at the academy. Mom when Mom stopped riding, she worked up in the office as doing billing and things like that. So she was a member. She got her life membership here, and right up until the time she just couldn't anymore, she worked here in the office.
Chip Riley. I joined Abingdon Fire Company in 1976. What inspired me to become a member of the fire service was obviously my parents. My father was a life member here at Abingdon, was a past chief, especially when I was a kid. So I was born and raised into the fire service, and we were so honored to be a member here at Abingdon, and he was, and my mother was also a member of the Ladies Auxiliary for about 30 years, and Dad was about 52, 54 years.
So I'm Chris Breslin, joined Abingdon in 1997. So I was a fireman in Pennsylvania for many years, moved to Maryland for a job supposedly for 1 year, and immediately wanted to find a fire company to join. First place I stopped along the way was Abingdon, and shortly thereafter I built a house literally around the corner from the firehouse just to be part of that community.
Damian Clark. I joined in December of 1996. Some of my friends had an accident at 543 and 7, and we were all there or whatever, and the firefighters that came, I had questions with them or whatever about how, they became firefighters and everything else. And when they came to me, they explained to me that this was all a volunteer county and everything else, so I inquired more of how I can become one, and lo and behold, 27 years later, I'm still here.
So I walked in the door in January of 1994. I had already come in trained, so I'd already come in with my EMT. I'd already taken that at a local college.
My name is Eugene Meadows. I was accepted into the Abingdon Fire Company March the 7th of 1979. When I was 6 years old, our house caught on fire. My mom was at home. She actually evacuated my brother and I, who was younger. So this fireman got up underneath the house with a hose line, and he was putting it out. And when he came out, he was covered with all kinds of debris, ashes, and insulation, and all this other stuff. And the funny part about it is I got to meet that guy 10 years ago as my first captain, Lou Espy.
My name's Glenn Hall. I joined Abingdon in 2001. A bunch of my friends that were at our wedding were in the fire department, and they all talked to me about it. And I went down and watched one night what they did and saw all the stuff that they do, and I was like, that looks pretty interesting, and I think I'd like to try to do it. So
I'm Howard McComas III. I officially joined the fire company in December of 1959. Just as a young kid, that was, I guess, the excitement in Abingdon. You either hung out at the firehouse or Davis's garage.
So my name's Jamie Taylor, and I joined Abingdon Fire Company originally in September of 1997. Originally I was in pre-med, and then life circumstances happened. I knew that I still wanted to provide care to patients and get into the medical field. So my best friend at the time, Tim Hamilton, suggested I become an EMT.
My name is Roy Mitchell. I became a probationary member in December of 1969. And we hung around the fire station. My dad was a volunteer fireman, had several friends, like Howard, who was a member. So back then it was the thing that you wanted to do, was get into the fire department and be a volunteer fireman.
They allowed me to respond by somebody driving me in a vehicle to woods fires and grass fires earlier before that, and allowed me to put on an Indian tank and help as a kid.
I'm Joe Tolliver. I joined the fire company in 1975. Well, the fire company needed help and the community needed help, and I had the ability to help man the station to give them the help other people needed.
Hi, I'm Ruth Tolliver. I joined Abingdon Fire Company in 1978. My husband Joe had joined a few years before that with my brother, who was Dale Pennington, had asked Joe to join, and Joe was never home because Joe was going to class, going to fire call, going to class, going to fire calls. So after my son was born, I decided if my children were ever going to see their father, the only way they were going to see him is if we went to the firehouse. So I put all the kids in the car, two of them, Angel and Joey, put them in the car, and we came to join the fire company. I joined the auxiliary, and so that way we could see Joe on a regular basis. You just volunteer. That's what I say. Most of us just volunteer because, especially the people who've been here the longest, because you are just here for your community. You're not here for yourself. You're not here about what's best for me. You're here about what's best for your community.
My name is Ken Vanderweel. I joined the fire service 46 years ago in June of 1978. I have joined here in January of 1989, and I have 35 and a half years here of service here at Abingdon now. It's been fun. If you enjoy this, if you enjoy what you're doing, it's been good. So it's been a good 46 years for me. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the 46, or I wouldn't be here.
Michael Crockett. I joined Abingdon Fire Company in October of 1990. Well, actually, I retired from the military. Then about a year later, kind of missed the involvement with the community, emergency responses, that sort of thing. And Abingdon Fire Company was looking for volunteers at the time, so I figured to come and try it out. Fire company was very small at that time. We only took in like about maybe 5 or 6 members a year. Of those that joined when I did, I'm the only one left. We were family. Everybody looked out for each other.
My name's Mike Stanford. I joined Abingdon Fire Company in 1986. My little brother Bubba, he joined when he was 16, and he became a career firefighter. And they were needing drivers, and I had a B license, so he conned me into joining. I went and I met with Tom Schultz, the chief, and I thought I was just going to drive. The way he looks at you sometimes, he just looked at me and goes, yeah. Well, it was a year or so before I got to drive, but I had a lot of fun doing the firefighting stuff.
My name's Noah Dotson. I've been with Abingdon roughly 3.5 years now. I know a couple members that were here, and just wanted to make a difference in the community.
My name is Rick Hampton. I joined the fire company in 1986. When I was young, I used to watch Emergency One. And so when I turned 16 is when I joined.
My name is Rob Glassman. Been here since 2001. I moved to Edgewood, down in Willoughby Beach, right across the street from the firehouse there. I met a couple guys from the Willoughby Beach station. They had asked me to, think about joining, and things like that. And then I found out that one of my friends from Bel Air, Steve Spicknell, was down here, and he was the captain here at House 1. So I came up here and I joined.
Stacy Franz. I joined Abingdon Fire Company in March in 1995. I've always wanted to do it since I was a little girl, so I finally had an opportunity to do it after I got out of high school. So I was proud to be a member of this department and still am.
My name's Steve Pennington, and I joined Abingdon Fire Company when I was about 16 years old, which means that was about 43 years ago. Well, I think mainly my father joined the fire company when I was a little kid, and then, being around the firehouse and seeing all the exciting stuff that was going on. It's every kid's dream to be a fireman or ride a fire truck. That my family was a part of this, and I wanted to follow in my father's footsteps and be a part of it as well.
I'm Steve Sines. I originally joined in 1983. I was 16 years old. I came up and applied on my 16th birthday. I lived down in Willoughby Woods near House 3, the old House 3, and I just had a huge interest in joining the fire service.
Hi, my name's Steve Yildhall. I joined Abingdon Fire Company back in 1989. I was a Boy Scout, and every time that there was a big event, they would have Reisterstown Explorer Scouts, which was part of Reisterstown Volunteer Fire Company, come out to provide EMS and fire safety.
My name is Thomas Schultz. Joined Abingdon Fire Company in November of 1964. As far as I know, he started probably in about the early 30s somewhere, right after Abingdon started in 1925. He was active for a while, was captain at one time. I do have memories of riding a truck with him going to a fire in Joppa, so that kind of put a bug on my brain as far as joining the fire company goes. And it was a shame that he passed away before I was able to join, but I was only 17 and a senior in high school at that time.
Hi, my name is Valerie Graham. I joined Abingdon Fire Company in 2007. My daughter had joined here at 17, and they were looking for volunteers, and they had a big fire, and she said that they were really seeing if they could get a bunch of volunteers to come. So she talked me into it, and I came and joined, and I had decided I was not going to be an EMT. I was just going to come check it out. And when I came in, they signed me up for an EMT class right away. So I started right away, and I've been here since.
My name's Zach Boyce. I joined here August 14th of 2014. When I joined here, young me thought, I'm 16 years old, how cool would it be to tell my friends, I get to run into fires? I never really imagined it was part of serving a community. It was just, oh man, I thought I'd be some bad 16 years old. I get to tell my friends I'm going into burning buildings. What 16-year-old gets to do that? No one. Quickly, as I've gone through the decade of being here, I've learned that it's more about the community, building a family here, and it's not just running into fires. There's a lot that goes into it.
Right then, I kind of knew that I would like it. It was loud, it was energetic, it was fun.
I'm still here after all these years, so it's been pretty interesting. Get to see exciting things, not so exciting things, and meet all kinds of different people on their best and worst days. So it's been real interesting.
I think the first part of it is overcoming the awe of the things that you have to do to become a member of the fire company. I think back 40 years ago, it was nothing like it is now. I can tell you that the class length was a lot shorter back then. The topics that you had to cover didn't even exist back then that you have to cover now.
You could be a member 1 hour, and the next hour you're riding down the road on the back of a truck thinking, what am I doing?
It was a very short period of time,
24 hours, you were riding.
Well, the skill requirements have gone up dramatically. And that's just from the progress the fire service has seen over the last 30, 40 years.
I was dragged into driving the old Cadillac ambulances. They said it was easy. My driver training consisted of a 30-minute ride around, and I was promised that I would never have to touch a patient. And that was back in the days when EMS was, in a Cadillac ambulance. The only medication we carried was oxygen. There was no EMT program, no ALS. It was pretty amazing. It was, swoop and scoop. That was our only way of taking care of patients.
Started as a firefighter. My level of training, I'm a firefighter 2 now. And throughout my years, I wound up going throughout the ranks of being a firefighter to a lieutenant. And then, of course, a few years later, I came back and I wound up going on the administrative side and being a board of director for 5 years.
First night, you remember, you could ride the truck. No experience. You basically hooked on to somebody else that maybe like Howard or was a friend of mine, Steve Hughes, that you kind of hung with. And they kind of watched out for you. They knew.
I have been an EMS sergeant, been an EMS lieutenant. I also did about 20 years on the operational side, and I thought, oh, maybe I should help out administrative. Applied to be vice president, was vice president under Charlie Williams for about 9 years, and then became president. And then worked my way to being the current board of, the chairperson of the board here at Abingdon.
Well, you had the old MIFRE program, basic, and then you went on to tactics, special fires, pumps, and they gave you your, what that little triangle patch is, it's on the table out there, that was your advanced fireman. Yeah.
Tom said there's a process, and eventually you will be able to drive the engine and the other equipment, but you need to be trained on that first. First, you become a firefighter.
Went through Fire 1, Fire 2, got rescue tech, rescue specialist. Within 6 months, Steve Pennington had approached me to become a driver down here. Within a year, he'd approached me to put in for lieutenant. So I followed that right along, became lieutenant. I was captain at House 3, I was captain at House 1, and then eventually became assistant chief and did that for 4 years.
Back then, we started training like they do now on Monday nights, and you'd go on drills. We even went on house burnings, like Eugene Meadows and Joe Tolliver and Chris Hoffmeister. We all went with Aberdeen on a house burning. I'd never bottled up before. And I bottled up, I was on the roof, I was in and out of the building all day long. And at the end of it, I asked Eugene how I did, and he goes, well, if we get a fire call, you're going with me. Then I went to firefighter class, firefighter 1, 2, 3, and you still needed the formal training, but back then, some things, everything was documented, but you just, you work through things.
That was the way easiest part. The hard part was all the training that we did in between all of that. I've got every rescue discipline except for collapse. I'm instructor 3, fire instructor 3, fire officer 2. A lot of training in there to do that. Plus, Steve and I took on a major role, and Matt Galecki took on a major role when we were the chief officers to really drive training when we were the officers. Me and Steve went to Florida for training. We went to all the firehouse expos for training. We went to North Carolina for Big Rig Rescue. We really pushed the training aspect, and we did it ourselves to show everybody else that if you got to do it.
That network that we rode together, we trained together, we taught together. There was someone like Mike Shefford, Dave Nitz, myself. I'm trying to think of some other ones that, and it's different now what it is today. I mean, God, EMT class, 60 hours? I think it's 160 hours now.
I took my EMT class at Essex Community College, and it was a little intimidating because I started when I was 48, so I was the oldest one in the class. But I actually liked it. I liked the teacher. I thought what all we did, all the practicals and stuff, I really liked all that. The first year that I was here, I was taking my EMT, and once I completed that, Steve Pennington was the chief at the time and asked me if I would start a new members class, which I did, and I did that for a year, and then the following year in 2009 I became a lieutenant. I did that for 2 years.
It just seemed like it progressed. It was the thing to do. We took all the training classes and progressed up in the ranks, working through the line officers. I was not that interested in administrative part of it. I was more interested in the firefighting and rescue part. So I went through all the training classes of the basic and advanced firemanship, basic and advanced first aid, basic and advanced rescue, officers training class, and eventually worked up to ran for assistant chief and was assistant chief under Dick Sewell and then Charles Raleigh for a total, I think, of 4 or 5 years, late 60s, early 70s.
I mean, realistically, your longest training you're ever going to have to do is your Fire 1 or your EMT. I've gone through both. Fire 1, you're looking at 4 or 5 months of your time being taken up just to get the general basics to be able to do this. Same with your EMT. I just took it. It's 205 hours now. I sat in class from January to May. It's 5 months. It is a long time. And, it's 3 nights a week, Saturdays all day pretty much. It was a long class. But, to be able to do this one time, and that's all you have to do is just do this class one time, and then you can just continue to serve your community, why not? And, sure, there's a bunch of other classes. I have my Fire 1, my Fire 2, my Site Ops, Rescue Tech, all that. Those are just add-ons. You don't have to take them. So if you really just wanted to come and be a firefighter, take your Fire 1. That's all you need. You don't have to do all these extra classes. Yes, the extra classes do help you, especially because we do run a majority corridor of 95. You're going to have a lot of accidents. It's good to know how these cars on our roadway function, how to disassemble them, the fastest ways, the easiest ways.
If you wanted to stay up with what was going on, you needed to be in the class.
The commitment to time, because there's so much more that you can do, so much more to learn, and the advancement in technology and patient care is so much more advanced. Even with the firefighting, it's more involved now because of the technology and things.
Training operationally, firefighting is a risk. I mean, you could lose your life doing this. I mean, it's fun, but there's a big chance out there that you might not come home. So to be able to train and operationally know the tactics and what you're supposed to be doing on the scene and your responsibilities. I mean, you're responsible for other people if you're on the RIT team, or if you're the truck, have to know that you're responsible for search and rescue and going to the roof and cutting the hole and ventilation. So the training aspect as far as the fire side operationally is very important, because you have to know what you're doing, because somebody could get hurt or killed if you don't.
Abingdon Fire Company has always been a trendsetter throughout the county. They always had higher standards for their officers and things like that. And if you wanted to, advance up the ranks and everything, you had to take all the training. So, so there was a little bit of initiative there, to continue with it.
Never stop training, because you can always teach somebody something when you're here in the station.
I was happy being just a fireman, but then when I had joined Abingdon and I was here during the daytime hours because I worked midnight shift, there were needs. We needed drivers for ambulances, so I started driving the ambulance. Well, then there were some times where I ended up on scene for a while by myself before a provider showed up. So I felt the need to have better training for myself to help somebody before somebody else of a higher level of training could get there to take over. So I took EMR, and then that turned into EMT. And you know, I enjoyed riding the ambulance. And then there was a need for an officer. So I believe Steve Pennington was chief and talked to me about going down to House 3 to be a lieutenant because there was a need there and an opening. And he felt that I could handle that position down there.
You just turn around and it's there. And now all of a sudden you're the only one sitting at the front table. So you and the other chief officers and the president, and it's just you, and it just seems to sneak up on you.
It's not just about the color of a helmet. There's a job that goes with it, and that job can be difficult at times.
It's never been about the helmet. I could really care less that I was a chief.
When you're the person that is in charge, then you're responsible for all of those people on that scene. And it's scary sometimes, especially when something goes wrong. You know, it's something to be able to fall back on your training and start clicking those things that are built in, that the training built into you, to start realizing this is what I need to do, this is what I need to take care of, this is what's important, this is what I don't really have to worry about right now until I can get control. Then I can go back and worry about that. So that leadership-wise, that's really important.
Well, the technology difference is just absolutely dramatic. The old ambulances, we only had oxygen as a medication. One of the advantages of riding around in the old Cadillacs was when we did CPR, you could put your back against the ceiling and do compressions. It was really neat. But back then, we didn't have anything like the Lucas devices. Actually, originally, we didn't carry cardiac monitors or anything like that. Actually, one of the big changes has been the yearly updates of protocols. Now we carry between 20 and 30 drugs, and every year we have to go through a recertification and update those medications on our list and make sure that we know how to administer them. It's been a dramatic change, and I always tease our medical director that us old guys have seen so many of the medications go and come on the list because they keep changing based on evidence-based medicine, what medications are used for and whether they're used or not.
Technology has made a huge difference. When I started, as you've heard probably many times, back in the day, when you had to lift patients with the stretcher, lift the wheels up, now at the push of a button, you lift heavy patients, skinny patients of all sizes. So that has made a difference. I think that makes the difference also in the provider itself, and not being so burdened with the weight of the patients and all the equipment that we have to carry.
Is our hand-free pads that we have, because we used to have the really cool paddles, which I do miss because they were awesome. But I like the hand-free pads because that freed us up to be able to do other things during a cardiac arrest situation or a cardiac event situation, because they were stuck there and we could do whatever, and then we could go about starting IVs or doing everything else.
The EKGs, just to monitor themselves, from a little box with great big paddles like you saw on the TV show Emergency or something like that, to now it's a monitor with, you can see all the different rhythms and things.
They had the old brown telemetry that they used to use, the old brown box, the old EMRC radio, and today, I mean, even our radios that we had, they only had 2 channels on them. There was one portable, there was one for the officer, and one in the back for one person. And to see all that come about, now we've got, you can talk to anybody from here to California or the world as long as the repeaters and the computer's up. Yeah, a lot of changes.
Now, it used to be that if we had a cardiac arrest, we grabbed the patient and ran to the hospital. Now we stay and do everything we can for the patient, which is basically the same stuff that the hospital does, and we can actually pronounce the patient on the scene and reduce the risk to the patient and to the public by not running to the hospital emergency with somebody who's probably not going to survive in any case.
We had the old silver Furnos. We always lifted up by hand, got lifted with the knees, not with the back. I remember that in '95. And now last year, as I'm looking at these ambulances now, we've got these self-loading ambulances. All you got to do is press a button to bring the wheel down and lock it in, press the button up, and then put the reel up and it loads itself in.
Community paramedicine now is making its way into EMS, which means we stay on scene longer because we're now, considered clinicians, and we deliver definitive care, so we can actually take the time to stabilize the patient and do our job before taking them to the hospital, which ultimately leads to better outcomes.
Technology as in computer, where before we had to stubby pencil everything, write it all down with a pen and pencil, or pencil and paper, and as opposed to now, carrying iPads on the units, and to be able to transmit that information right from the scene, right at the patient's home or bedside, able to transmit on the radio and get that information right over to the hospital, whether it be from a life pack, all the EKG and vitals and everything goes directly to the hospital. It happens lickety split, like within minutes we can get the information that's needed so that when we get to the hospital, they're prepared for us, ready for us.
The Lucas, even though the patient has to fit within certain parameters, the Lucas, number one, made it safer, for providers in the back of the ambulance because somebody didn't have to stand up and manually do CPR. But the Lucas is accurately doing CPR the same way every single time to make sure that it's delivering high quality CPR for that patient, which yielded better outcomes. Plus it freed up a provider to do other things, that we needed in the back of the ambulance.
So when I joined, most of the construction of the buildings was what they call a Type 5 ordinary, which is a very well-constructed building. We've moved to lightweight truss. We've moved to lightweight construction. So basically houses nowadays and everything in them is pretty much plastic wrapped in gasoline. Very highly combustible fuels. The burn rate, there used to be something in the fire service called the 20-minute rule. If you weren't making progress in 20 minutes, you kind of reassessed at that point. That time frame is now 2 to 3 minutes because of how rapidly everything in a house burns, the temperatures they ignite at. So the gear's gotten more progressed and more technologically stable to defend firefighters. All the equipment that we use has had to be upgraded, and with that comes a greater learning curve to work on those things. So while the training has gone up, it's equally important for survival to learn it. So yes, back in the day, the classes might have been shorter, but people took a lot of them. So, there's an expression that says a jack of all trades is a master of one. Well, the actual expression is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but always better than a master of one. So a fireman's actually become quite jack of all trades.
Well, from the older buildings, depending on when they were constructed, of course, the fire codes the buildings and everything are very outdated and everything else. Everything that's coming in new construction now, we would love that because everything would be up to date, sprinklers, everything else. And even if it happens to be possibly any type of emergency fire, etc., in that building, it would suppress the fire and everything else before we get there. And in the long term, it would wind up saving firefighter lives.
There were a lot of differences back in those days. Number one, there weren't as many laws and rules that affect us. I don't know if OSHA existed back then or MOSHA existed back then, but I can tell you it exists now, and it has driven why and how we do things.
If you really think about Abingdon in 100 years, and we think about where the members that were before us and what they did to get us to where we are today, it's unbelievable.
And they went to the firehouse, right? The fire whistle blew, somebody needed help. That's all it matters. It's all it should matter. Communications, as far as the learning, has come so far from the first pager I had that looked like a big brick on my hip that just basically went off and told you that there's a call, to the ones that we have now that are basically mini radios that you can change talk groups and listen to different things that go
on. We used to do what I consider now some pretty dumb things, going into burning buildings, especially without breathing apparatus. You'd go in, you'd knock the fire as best you could and run for a window to get some fresh air.
And I saw things progress. one of I think the biggest improvement that we had during that time when I first got in 59 and early 60s, our breathing apparatus was a Chemox mask, and that had a canister that was inserted and then had two lungs like on each side, and you'd go in a building with that, and that only lasted, I don't know, 15 minutes or less. And then after that along came the MSA air masks, and that was a big improvement. And I think that was one of the biggest safety improvements that I saw during my time.
When I first started, for instance, our SCBA bottles, we had the old MSAs, and we had the nozzle tube that extended from the mask. And there have been plenty of times if you had a dumpster fire, auto fire, whatever, and you have your SCBA on, there'd be times if you were too busy in tune with doing the job that it came to the point or whatever, like that tube would close up on you and you wouldn't get any air. So at least the SCBA that we have up to date now, whatever, we don't have that tube and everything else. So that kind of eliminates that and it makes it safer.
The masks, they were steel bottles, and then they went with the fiberglass ones, and then they went with new 1 hour bottles, you know, the new latest greatest, and they were green bottles that we used to wear, and now you're in about the 4th or 5th generation of masks that I've seen come about.
One of the other changes in firefighting is the fact that when I started riding, we didn't have assigned turnout gear. There was just a rack of turnout gear. You grabbed what was there.
Turnout gear, I remember when we had 3/4 boots, and if you were lucky enough to get a Nomex coat, you got one. If not, it was an old Army duck coat that they used in the Navy. Those were the first bunker pants that most members got that you had to pay for on your own because they wouldn't give them to you. They couldn't afford it. I mean, they were barely paying the light bills.
Actually, when I first joined, the first piece of gear that I ever got had a corduroy collar on it. So that's how old I am. We still had steel SCBA bottles that were heavy as all get out. So, you know, a lot has changed between then and now as far as the gear that we have now is so much lighter. We have composite SCBA bottles.
Back then, you wore a helmet, gloves, a lightweight turnout coat, and long boots, and that was it. We didn't have hoods. We didn't have a lot of the protective equipment. We didn't have bunker pants. We didn't have a lot of the protective equipment that we have now.
The gloves, I mean, they were just regular work gloves, or the old red ball gloves, and then the old Firecrafts, and then, you know, then the newest, greatest thing is still coming along, and they're making new models every day. There's been a lot of changes. So, and then went from rubber boots to leather boots. But a lot of changes over the years.
The turnout gear, of course, I don't know what the pounds were years ago when I started 27 years ago, but now we have the gear, whatever, that it's very lightweight. It's almost like putting on a coat and pants. And the boots that we have, we used to call them 3/4 boots or duck boots back in the day, whatever. Like our boots are almost like you're wearing sneakers anymore. So everything nowadays is 100 times better than what it was 27 years ago.
And then for the fire side, more as like a rescue perspective, it's the tools. We went from the great big heavy hydraulic tools to now we have battery powered tools that do the same job, and it's more efficient, more easier to get to the person or get to where we got to go. And changing, we have the rescue truck, but now we have rescue engine. We have engines with rescue tools on it because we can fit that stuff in these pieces of equipment, and that changes the whole perspective when you're out on the road. So it makes a big difference.
Well, back then we didn't have the porta power. We had porta powers. We didn't have the Hearst tool till later on, and everything was really done by hand. Where nowadays, okay, you've got other electrical equipment that you can use to do what needs to be done. And if you're on a PI, you ended up taking chains and wrapping around the dash and stuff, and come along and strapping it to the front of the vehicle on the frame and ratchet the dash from the patient if they were pinned by the dash. But now you got the hearse tools, and you can snip here, snip there, and the work's a whole lot easier.
Probably a thermal imaging camera was probably one of the most technologically advanced things that came along during my career. The first one was about the size of a howitzer, so it was actually a talisman, and it was about yay big, and it looked like a loaf of bread. And now they're very micro, sometimes inside a mast, handheld. That technology has grown.
The only way they could buy equipment was to have some kind of fundraising event. So the auxiliary was a big part of raising money to buy things. Like when they had the train accident, they didn't have jacks to raise the trains at the time. So after the accident, then the fire company wanted to buy the jacks to raise the trains. So the auxiliary raised the money, and that, you know, got them the equipment that they needed. But that also benefits the community because they now have the equipment that they need because of what the auxiliary did or what we did. So that's how we help support the fire company and the community by, fundraising. And we were really big into fundraising back then.
I'm very proud to be the third generation in the Abingdon Fire Company. My grandfather was one of the founding members when they met in 1924 in Tucker's store. They unofficially met in 1924, and then I think the fire company itself was incorporated in 1925. The first engine that was bought was then stored behind Tucker's store, and in the daytime, even Mrs. Tucker, they said, would be able to drive the engine if no one else was around, and she would take the engine to the fire, and the fellows would all respond.
I was never around when there was a horse around Abingdon, and I don't ever remember a story of the firehouse where there was a place where horses were kept, and you pushed the wagon out and attached it to the horse.
First real engine, I can't say the 56 Mac, I think is what we bought.
I remember we were drilling on a Sunday afternoon, and we only had two places to go to drill with hydrants in our area. One was at Edgewood High School, the other one was Beta Shoe Company. So we were at Edgewood High School drilling with Old 41. That was the 1940 Mac. And Sidney Valsic was an officer back then, and he decided to put 600 gallons of water in a 500-gallon tank, and he blew the tank on Old 41.
This new international pickup truck, and had the radio inside, and didn't have the markings like they do today, but and he would get a fire call, and I get to go. And man, yeah, as a 10-year-old, you talk about excitement and giddy, and oh yeah, man, as long as I stayed in the truck, I couldn't go anywhere, but I don't think you can do that today.
My first piece of equipment I learned to drive on was engine 43. That was out of Abingdon. That was one of those where you double clutch, no power steering. And Howard and a few other ones showed me the operation of the pump and how to hook up to a hydrant. And now I was asking questions. I remember one of the drivers, Bobby Hunt, and I said, Bobby, how much pressure do you put on the hose so these guys know? And he says, well, when you're looking out there on the line, if you see the guy flapping, you know you got too much pressure, turn it down.
The first ladder truck we had bought a used ladder truck from Bel Air, one of our neighbor fire companies, and it was a tower, so it had a bucket. And I can remember, some circumstances where sometimes people didn't pay attention to the bucket that sticks out in front of the truck, and sometimes it hit a sign or a tree or whatever. And now we don't have a bucket ladder truck. We've got a different kind of ladder truck with a straight ladder, but it's got a pump.
When I first joined here, we were running open cab engines, which mean they weren't enclosed, which mean when we got on the fire truck, we were exposed to all the weather, going and coming back from calls.
No seatbelts, no crash protection.
As you know, nowadays they've enclosed them, which for safety, you get the heat, you get the air in the summer, heat in the winter, which is, fantastic for the firefighters, great rehab. We didn't have that back in '89. They were open cab.
From the early 60s till when I kind of got out in the middle to late 80s was the rescue equipment here at the fire company. Abingdon at the time had the big mammoth rescue truck. We didn't have anything here per se. We had a small, I believe it was a Dodge, like workman or handyman's van type thing. It was nothing but ropes and pulleys, but I saw it evolve from then in the early 70s to when I left in the middle 80s. We had a big Ford diesel, pretty good size truck that carried Hearst tools and your different equipment that you have today.
Probably the biggest thing is, we talk about apparatus numbers. We had 43, which then became 413, and 41, which was 411. We had 421, which was an old tanker, right? All those apparatus had 2 seats up front, and everybody else rode on the fire truck wherever you could literally grab a spot.
The electronics, you know, that help you do your job as a pump operator, or just being able to figure out simple mechanical things that may be wrong with the unit. Everything from engines to transmissions to, you know, how they steer, you know, has changed over the years.
I saw it all happen. We went from open cabs. Actually, the tanker didn't have anything but the back step on it. It only had room for 2 people up in the front. No equipment, just the 2 people up front. 1,500 gallons. It was a Dodge, and it was a 5-speed. It was a manual transmission that you never heard of anymore. And I did get to drive it. So, but from riding on the back step to watching them go to enclosed cabs, and actually it wasn't even the enclosed cabs. There was just the bucket seats up in there, you know, with the old Seagraves that we had, and you know, then all the bells and whistles, all the electronics and all the telemetry that's on the equipment today that they can tell you even when you hit the brake real hard for some reason.
I think some of the older fun things were riding on the back step of the fire truck, and the tanker used to have this big giant, it was called a fast dump valve on the back step, and if you were the young guy, that was right in the middle. And if you were a short guy, it was kind of like you were going to ride this metal horse, and you're bouncing down the road, and this is not a very comfortable thing. And there was 4 or 5 spots on the back of step, and you're holding on. Well, then people started falling off.
I don't know if we ever had anybody fall off the back step. We had 1 or 2 fall off the side step.
Fell off the back of the truck twice. Once it pulled out of the station there in Abingdon before I was ready, and I wound up on the concrete floor. They stopped at 43, picked me up and put me back on the truck, and we kept on going. The other was a woods fire on Willow Beach Road one summer day, and I think Tom Eller was driving. It was old 41 again out of Long Bar, the 1940 Mac. I was the only one on the back of the engine. It was a woods fire and Willow Beach Road, and he slowed down, and I thought he was getting ready to stop, and I thought he found the fire. So I got ready to step off the back, and then he apparently wasn't the right site, and he took off, and they got to the fire, and I wasn't on the back of the truck.
I was a tail step guy. I was an open cab guy and a canopy cab guy.
When I came into the department back in the 70s, we stood on the back step, and they thought that was the greatest thing. We would be gearing up, going down the road, could be pouring down rain, and we would be putting our quarter boots on, our helmets, and our coats.
When I first joined, we were standing on the back step getting dressed as we went 40, 50 mile an hour down the road.
You know, it's just, I can remember riding a tail step with a cover over my head, rubber boots, gloves and a coat, and a helmet.
I can remember, you know, you're going to go to a call, and if you were a new member and you were on the back step and there was a more senior member, you had 2 choices. You either got off or you climbed up in the hose bed and just held on for your dear life underneath of the hose cover if the hose cover was on there.
That was an experience.
You go back and look at the way we rode equipment back then. You ride the tailboard of an engine going down the road at 50, 55 mile an hour with the hose cover over your head because it's raining or snowing. There are even times when you're putting gear on back there. I'm surprised we're all still living.
Now we had straps we had to put on, and then you think that's safe, and then eventually that all came to an end, right? I mean, too many firefighters were getting hurt by falling off the back fire apparatus, or if the fire truck had an accident, I mean, it was crazy.
Unfortunately, I missed the years where they were still riding on the tail step.
Today, you gear up outside the engine before you get on the engine. You step inside an engine that's either nice and cool or nice and hot, and you put a seatbelt on. So it's evolved so much for safety.
But seatbelts are now mandatory, and all the apparatus have, indicators to let the driver know that everybody's seatbelted, so he can have everybody sitting down and ready to go and belted in before he even leaves the station. The ride on the apparatus with the new suspensions and stuff like that is way better than the old apparatus that would bounce you around.
That's some of the most significant stuff, is just the excitement of getting the stuff on and jumping on the equipment and heading out the door, no matter what the call.
But a lot has changed as far as safety-wise. I think it's probably one of the biggest improvements that has been made since I've first started.
The emergency service is the same everywhere. The bell goes off and people have to be prepared to get on a piece of fire apparatus. The fire apparatus needs to be ready. Got to have the right tools on the fire apparatus or the ambulance, and you got to get out the door and go solve the problem. And the next thing is getting everybody home safe.
The prices have just jumped up. We are honestly right now looking to replace our rescue truck, and we're looking at $2.5 million to replace that. Where back when I joined in '89, we were buying fire trucks for a couple $100,000.
A little 3-year-old girl is sitting there looking at her cat up in the tree with their, parents and everything standing over them, because now you've got more of the problem than just the cat up there. Now you've got somebody that's really hurting, and that's the way it should be taken.
And I spent a lot of time with the military, and this is a lot like that. I mean, we see things that people aren't supposed to see.
And then now there's some new challenges that people are dealing with. What happens when you come back after you've been out on a call and it's been a tough call? How do you deal with that, and how does that affect your family and you into the future? So,
I remember a multiple alarm fire in Bel Air up in the Forest Hill area. I was riding truck 431. It wound up being a multiple alarm fire, and after we extinguished the fire, come to find out it was a few fatalities up there, and that was my first time dealing with death first hand.
Most of the calls that you go on that are serious are always going to affect you one way or the other. So some of the really bad calls, I mean, people stuck up underneath of trains. I had an ice rescue one time. I just couldn't get any further. I was already up to my neck. I couldn't get any further. I couldn't grab a hold of anything. They're just bad calls, and sometimes they're just bad days, and you have to learn to live with them and just put it behind you and move on.
When you're sitting here, you're just getting cleared, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting for that call. And then the bells drop, and it's the Amtrak disaster. I will never forget it.
I drove into the bus accident on northbound 95 where the school bus full of kids flipped over on the side. Leaving that scene, I was like, holy crap, did I do anything? Was I good? And I think probably one of the best things that happened for me was the first person I run into was Steve Pennington. And then the first thing he said was, you were really good on the radio and you did a good job requesting that equipment and what they needed for that scene.
We can go back a few years ago. We had 2 sheriffs killed right in our own area. You will never forget that call.
Something that stands out is the day that Pat and Mark got shot. It's probably the worst call I've ever had to be in charge of. And to try to keep myself together and keep everybody else together. Right? You need to keep it together till after. Then after, you can have your emergency, right? During is not a good time. So, because, you know, there really is no 911 for us.
And in 2015, my mom's house burned down. And it was in Perryman. I'm home cooking my wife Valentine's Day dinner. The pager went off, 310 Forge Lane. I'm like, oh my God. And I left. I drove up here and I mean, it's rocking. I totally lost it. You know, I couldn't even think. And, you know, I remember laying in the front yard with my hands over my face, and Steve Hens came to me and tapped me on the back. And, you know, it's really, you know, it's everybody's emergency until it's your own. And now I relate to everything differently. Now that I've experienced that type of emergency when I lost a home, you give a different perspective to that person who's in trouble. You treat them differently because you know what it feels like.
When we were at the top of Otter Point Hill at Abingdon Road and Route 40, when we got a call for a trailer fire at Hale's Trailer Park, and we turned around immediately, of course, did a U-turn, responded, and the trailer was off. I threw a mask on. I think it took a booster in through the front, worked my way to the back, and there were 2 kids in the back, and we couldn't save them. That was probably the most tragic fire, and it sticks in my memory today. That we couldn't get there in time, yet we were just about within a mile when they alerted us.
We had a house fire at the corner of Abingdon Road and Route 7 where 4 members of the family got killed because of the fire. It's the worst call I've ever been on.
We had a 2-alarm house fire in Joppa. Actually, the lady set the house on fire herself. And our truck crew was the truck crew that found all 3 people up on the 3rd floor. And the one thing that, you know, I always think about is how close they were to actually getting out.
Ask yourself the question after every call. What did I do? Or what did we as a crew do to fix this problem?
You guys were willing to kind of do what it took to solve the problem, and I think that speaks volumes of who we are as an emergency services, right? Think outside the box. You know, whatever challenges are going to be there, we got to find a resolution for them.
I think that was the craziest part about that whole incident, was actually being invited to, going to the funeral, and the family being thankful for what we did.
And believe it or not, there's more good than bad. The bad weighs heavily on you, but when you have the good, it carries you through the bad.
One particular incident, extremely bad, was a house fire on Philadelphia Road, the Shropshire fire. There were a total of 5 fatalities in that fire. That's probably the worst thing I've ever been on, but it's also a part of what the service is all about. And you can't really let it get to you. Yes, it does bother me, as some people are well aware, but you know, you try not to think about it a whole lot.
You gave the people, the citizens that we serve, the best care that was possible.
Do my job, right? And I teach that now. Like, I teach in the academies now for DES. So, and one of the things we talk about is peer support and things like that, SISM. And I always tell people your job comes first, right? Somebody called you because they're having an emergency. That is not the time for you to have one.
The food market in Edgewood was on fire. We were in gear with SCBAs on, crawling in the aisleway towards where we thought the fire was going, and we had canned goods exploding all around us. So yeah, that can tell you how hot it was. So that was a scary thing.
To stand there for hours watching them search through the ashes. And I've had to do that 3 times. So you have, those memories are the hardest ones. A lot of happy memories as well, but you know, sometimes the hard ones kind of stick with you.
And his wife was like, why are you leaving me? You know, she's like kneeling there. And normally calls don't bother me, you know, but given the time of the year and the suddenness of the call, and obviously, you know, her reaction and the family started to arrive, that weighed on me a little bit.
One of my last calls where I decided I didn't want to do it anymore was a boy that went into, it was a construction site, and he had gone down and went right into the backhoe.
You know, the good calls you pack away for another day. The bad calls you try to shove back as far as you can, but eventually they come back to haunt you.
I'm a mental health first aid provider and instructor. I've taken lots of various mental health classes through NAEMT and elsewhere. And I even do a mental health section for EMT and paramedic at the college, because I believe that stigma needs to go away and that people need to learn to ask for help before their demons get them. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. You're not any less macho. We do need 911 for us.
I would like to see them treat everybody as they wanted their own family to be treated.
Obviously, one of the calls that comes to mind right away is the call when my wife collapsed. Unfortunately, by the time it was all over with, I lost my maid of 28 years. So that obviously is a very stressful call that's, you know, just etched in my memory. You know, our life was the fire service, and we spent 28 years together as EMS leaders here at Abingdon, in the county, and in the state. So it was, you know, it was a great time. It had a great effect on my life because we were running crazy a lot of our life.
Think back to the day when it was Deusa and Deusa. There's so many jokes circulating around that there'd be a call for here, there, and the other. And that's when they, of course, announced who was responding and how many calls was saved at the last minute, be it Abingdon or Joppa, Deusa and Deusa responding. You know, that was the standard part of the call almost for a while. So.
And it scared me, but I had to keep going though. Linda Deusa came up. Love that lady. Said I did a good job with it, but she's always backed me when I was at House 3 with trying to do EMS. Every time I had a question, she was always trying to answer it and help me out. I loved riding with her and Bill, and they were great together. And if I had any questions, she was right on top of it, and she worked with me. Her and Bill always worked with me on the medic unit, and I love it. And I miss riding the medic unit, but I also miss having Linda around talking to and asking questions about EMS all the time.
After I finished my EMT class, you had to do 50 calls to be an aide, and I was very nervous about being an aide, and I was not like pushing for it. But Linda Deusa was like after me all the time, saying, you know, you need to keep going so you can be an aide. And one day she came into the bay and she said, okay, you're cleared as an aide. And I was like, I am? I was like, oh no. But
the brothers and sisters that we've lost over the years, working with all of them, you know, the Charlie Rileys, the Linda Deuces, Lou, Steve Strawbridge, you know, they showed us so much, and they shared their knowledge not only about the company and about themselves, but also the state in different ways. And they were big losses to the company but it was also, it happens, and it hurts, but it happens. And you just hope that what they their knowledge that they shared, that somebody around the company picked that up and ran with it.
The camaraderie at that station, as I remember it, and again, I was just a kid. I was 16, 17, 18 years old. It was just great. It was like a brotherhood and a sisterhood. We had great people. We hung out. We would watch videos or play Trivial Pursuit or order dinner in. And it wasn't just a fire company, but it was a brotherhood.
So there's pranks that you pull. You send people to look for spark plugs for a diesel engine, which don't exist, or you send them to the auto parts store for a headlight for a fire truck, which nobody can find. So that kind of, I guess, jumping in, if you will, of new firemen, or you tell them that, you go get the hose stretcher, which doesn't exist. So, we tease them a little bit just to get them oriented, but it actually serves some functionality, because then they would realize what's on the rig and they would look at things. And
well, my personal feeling is that I'm naturally sort of a teacher, and I enjoy teaching people about things. It's really been enjoyable being a preceptor and helping people out. You need to make people confident in their capabilities and their skills, and make sure that they become good clinicians.
I was afraid to put on the mask because I was claustrophobic. Chris Hoffmeister, back then, when he was the assistant chief, helped me out with that, with the mask, getting over the claustrophobic. He also helped me out with getting over the fear of heights with the ladder truck. So I give credit to Chris Hoffmeister with helping me and keeping me going, because I wanted to quit at that time, because if I couldn't do it, I wasn't going to do it. But Chris Hoffmeister and a lot of the guys at House 3 kept pushing me and kept saying, you can do it, you just got to work at it, you got to persevere through it and just keep going. And they were always there to help me out, and I'm grateful from the crew from the old station on Laburnum to help me out, and Chris Hoffmeister, and I'm grateful that I stuck with it.
It's like your own family. You don't have, it's not just a team where you go, play football or baseball or something like that, and you leave and whatever. This, to me, is a little more as a family, and you look out for each other, and you make sure everybody's okay, everybody goes home safe, and just, and then when you go home, you get ready to do it again the next time. So you show up and do it all over again. And like I said, we don't always get along, but that's what family does. I don't know any family that everybody gets along 100% of the time, especially a place like this. It's crazy, but yeah, we love to hate each other and hate to love each other. So
delegating job duties through your crew, because at the end of the day, you all are one crew and you're there to perform a task together.
You really have to have it in your heart to want to be here, because there is a lot of sacrifices.
I think this fire company has always been known to work as a team, and sometimes you might not really agree with what the other person's saying, but at the end of the day, you got to shake hands and say we agree to disagree, and whoever the highest rank is makes the final call. But everybody, I used to always say I don't always get my way, but I usually get my say.
I mean, it's always nice, to see students or even new EMTs come on, and then you're working with them to get them cleared on the ambulance or to review stuff with them, and then they have that aha moment where it clicks. And to see that facial expression on them, and to see that they thought they had it before, but when they really have it and that clicks and they have that aha moment, you can just tell. And then that excitement, gives me excitement too, because, that's what we're here for, is to groom the next generation and, to grow the volunteers and to make them better and to make them future leaders.
That's our job. Our job is that once you get to being somewhat comfortable, because you're never real comfortable with this job, is to teach the people coming into the department or into the company or into the profession how you can do better than me, and if so, then I've done the job. But you can become whatever you want. There's no reason why you can't, as long as you try and you dive into it and give it the time and the effort to move through it.
Knowing that the hard work that I put in here doesn't go unnoticed, and that, you know, maybe I can be the next person to guide somebody and help them.
Yes, you have to keep on keeping on. You have to remember what you're there for and why you're there. You have to take the good with the bad. It's just like, you know, a family. You have to take the good with the bad, just like you do your regular family, because we are a family here. So, and that's what we do. We support each other. We come back to the firehouse after it's all over. We hug each other. You know, we talk, we chat, we work our way through it, and that's how we deal with it, just like a regular family deals with their troubles that they have. And we're all having the same struggles, which makes your struggles not feel so bad now, because you know there's other people that are having the same problems. So when you feel kind of alone, just remember, you're not. There's a bunch of them out there that's going through the same thing you are. That's all I know.
My entire life's been in the fire service. Is in December 17th of 1959. My father went on a fire call in Van Bibber.
Charlie Raleigh responded on Unit 41.
And it was a working house fire.
And we knocked the fire down.
Dispatched in, obviously wasn't 911, it wasn't invented yet.
Fire headquarters called one of the units and said for Charlie Raleigh to return home.
At the time, the chief was a fellow named Dick Sewell. Everybody knows Mr. Howard McComas. It's his uncle. He had called the chief, which was Mr. Dick Sewell, and said, "Do you have a Charles Raleigh on the fire ground?" And he says, "Yes, I do." And he says, "Well, his wife is going in labor."
Chief Sewell gave Charlie's car because his son was about to be born. That was Chip.
Dad took the chief's car home and took Mom to the hospital.
And that's how Charlie got home, and that's how Chip was born, or when Chip was born.
Voila, I was born. It was a pretty neat way to kind of say your life started.
Well, if I was going to tell a dinner story, then obviously it would be about, like, you know, delivering a baby, because that's awesome and fun.
No, I never got to deliver a baby. It's been close a couple times, but no, I never had to deliver a baby, so I'm good with that one.
I never delivered a baby. That was one of the calls I really wanted to have, but I missed that one. I never got to do that one.
I have assisted with delivering 3 babies. The best one was with Linda Tingler and Bruce Winkler. Linda was great. Bruce, he was a little queasy, and we got everything settled. The baby was in Linda's arms in a towel, and we got the girl taken care of. And I told Bruce, we need to get the placenta. And he's like, say what?
Had my first baby delivery in 1981. I had 2, but the first one was a little nerve-wracking because it was the first.
I've only delivered 3 babies, though, in 25 years. So, I mean, apparently I don't get to deliver as many babies as Sydney does, because she delivers lots of babies.
It also feels good when you have someone a baby that you've delivered, that the mother and the child come up and say, "Do you remember me?"
I'll start with a good one. And it goes back a ways to back when Hugh Hines and I used to play ambulance duty all the time. And we had a chest pain call. We got there as an IV unit. Went and talked to the homeowner, right? He was having chest tightness, had been cutting trees all morning. It wasn't very hot out, but that man was sweating like it was 98 degrees. So we quickly called for ALS.
Linda and I responded separately in different cars.
Bill and Linda were coming. We loaded the patient up into the ambulance and Hugh started an IV on him. Linda and Bill both got there, and I was actually trying to get out of driving the ambulance.
Linda was going to do the transport. I was talking to the driver of the ambulance, trying to figure out how we were going to get all these vehicles in the right place.
So I was saying, well, why don't you guys go? I'll drive your car to the firehouse, and so that way you have 2 ALS people on this unit. And
when I heard Linda yell, "Bill, get in here!"
and the man had went into arrest.
And Linda, by the time I got in the back of the ambulance, she had the paddles out and had actually done the first shock.
I started to the hospital and I had turned onto Flying Point Road.
We shocked the guy again. He actually immediately woke up.
And I heard the man yell.
Which is amazing for cardiac arrest.
And Linda saying, "Sorry, but I had to shock you."
And she said, "Yeah, I gave you a big dose of electricity."
And then he talked the entire way to the hospital.
He did fine. It was amazing.
For me, that was amazing, right? That we had actually saved a life. Not maybe I was my driving, I drove good, so but I was part of the crew. So to be a part of that was an amazing feeling.
Actually, we were in Panera 10 years later, and he walked over. We didn't know who he was. He walked over to the table and said, "You guys live down in Willoughby Beach, don't you?"
Because you're right, a lot of times we run a lot of bad calls. We don't get a lot of good outcomes.
And we said, "Yeah," and he said, "You saved my life 10 years ago."
So when you do, that win means something more than, what a normal call would be.
So it was, that's a very positive call. It made our Christmas that year.
One call that stands out, I always laugh at is, I don't like working with kids but I showed up at a call. I was on my way home and I heard the call and I was right there. I showed up and this little girl jumped off the couch onto one of them bouncy balls and bounced off of that and landed on her neck. So when I walk in, the mom was a daycare mom. She had little kids. They were screaming and hollering. The little girl's screaming and hollering. And I walk over to her and I ask her name. And she tells me her name, and because generally kids don't like strangers touching them, I said, I pronounced it wrong. And right away she stopped screaming and stopped crying and looked me dead in the face and pronounced her name. It was Adriana. And okay. And I said, "Where does your leg hurt?" "It's my neck, not my legs." I said, "Okay, we're good." And then from there on, it was like, and then from the point we got her from the couch to the ambulance, Mom's still screaming and crying, and the little girl's like, "Hey, this is cool." Well, I had her head taped to a pillow like this on the backboard, and because it couldn't move her neck. But from that point on, it was like, that was cool. That was kind of funny. So
I was finally released to ride the equipment. It was housed down House 2 in Long Bar Harbor, and the fire was a Joppa Magnolia box. It's a house dwelling fire, probably about 11:30 at night on a Friday night, I remember, and it was kind of raining. And we get on, we're going down. It's a working fire down on Trimble Road, and it's a dwelling fire, and it's rocking pretty good. And I am so excited. Got the mask on, and they were the old metal bottles back then. But I was so excited and didn't realize where we had stopped, or whoever was driving that night had stopped the engine. But it was right by, there was a sharp curve there, and it was right by one of these road signs that only stick up and show you the curve. And as I jumped off all excited, I kind of straddled the pole, and it kind of got me, as you can imagine, being a male in the nasty parts of a male anatomy. And I definitely hurt myself, but didn't let anybody know that. And that was my first experience of a working fire, that I was like, man. So it got much better after that.
One day we get a call for parachuters, and APG was doing a drop, but they missed a drop. So we had like 7 guys hanging in trees in their parachutes, and we can't reach them with ladders, so we had old truck 431. So we took this truck, we backed it up to the trees, and we would rotate around and pick these guys out of the tree.
Well, there was one guy hanging up there we couldn't reach. We were just not long enough. So me and another guy, Chris Hoffmeister, took the roof ladder, tied it to the basket of the truck to get this guy out of the tree. Now with me saying that has violated every rule you could, but we made the grab, we made the rescue, and it worked. So, you know, that's something to think about.
We were on a wreck on 95, I believe 2 years ago, where a tractor trailer had rear-ended a box truck that had broke down in their lane. And he was carrying 400-pound coils of the electronics plastic, that silver stuff. And it ejected the coils out of the back of the box truck, and it crushed the cab of the tractor. And we, Aberdeen and Joppa, we worked on that truck for an hour. And we had the GO team there. Flight paramedic was inside, you know, running fluids. Actually, Jesse started the line so we could get some fluids running. You know, everybody worked extremely well together, and to see those guys get extricated and then walk out of the hospital the next day is absolutely amazing.
A lady that was terminally ill and unfortunately passed, but it wasn't known that she had passed at the time. We got there, did what we had to do, and you couldn't help but notice there was a household that had a lot of pleasant memories from the things that were on display, pictures on the mantle, that sort of thing. And noticing the husband, kind of a, shall we say, a sigh of relief that he wasn't seeing his wife suffering anymore. So you know what you do, what you have to do, and you don't let it get to you. And as things turned out, I guess it was about 3 or 4 weeks later, Edgewood High School was having their homecoming celebration or whatever it was, and we had a booth set up, and we were doing our thing, and this gentleman came up and thanked us for everything we had done that day. We hadn't really done anything, unfortunately. It was too late, but he appreciated the fact that we were there, that we tried to do things, and that really, in a way, that makes you feel good. You know, that he recognized me and a couple others, that we were the crew, and he thanked us for everything we did, and I had never experienced that before.
I could tell you about calls where somebody's air went out.
Mike Stanford was the chief. We pulled in and we're doing our thing. And the next thing we know, Gary Hinkle is hanging out a window.
He was in the bedroom up there, and I can't remember who he was with. And he came to the window, and he was shaking his hose, but there was still fire back there.
With his low pressure hose, back then the MSA had low pressure hoses, and he had it hanging, dangling out the window.
Ken Vanderweel and Rick Hampton, they threw the ladder, they got him out. The other person that was in there with him, you know, was okay, you know, and that was Gary Hinkle. Things like that happen. You have equipment failures. So you've got to be smart enough and trained enough to know what to do in those situations.
I can remember one time I was out on a fire call, and it was cold one night, really cold. You know, I had hot drinks and everything. And of course, you know, when you're at the fire, you guys are busy, busy, busy. I was just standing there, and all of a sudden I tried to move, and my boots were frozen to the ground because it had been raining. And so I couldn't even move because my boots were frozen. And I'm like, I can't believe these guys, how much these guys do until you actually go out there and see what they do. That just, you know, it grabs you by the heart to know how hard they're working. So any little bit that I can do to make their job better makes me feel good.
And her father had a heart attack right there when we were there. So we started working on him, got him in the ambulance, got him in the hospital, we brought him back. He was in the hospital for a couple of weeks and discharged. So it was, we happened to be at the right place at the right time.
And then there's been a couple calls with elderly people. They're like, oh, I'm sorry I bothered you, and this is the second time you've been here this week, and you just calm and reassure them and say, no, it's fine, everything's good. We're going to get you taken care of. Regardless if their blood pressure was too high or they had a syncopal episode, but a lot of times it was just fear, and they didn't needed reassurance, stuff like that. So you get them checked out, and if it was warranted, which we would take them to the hospital, but then sometimes they would sign off and say, no, I feel better now. So, you know, and that made me feel good. I like that.
there have been several times throughout the years that I've either seen people who I helped treat or saw them on a scene or something like that, and to have them recognize me and, hey, you helped my dad out, really they appreciate it. He's doing really good. So to get those kinds of follow-ups are good, because we don't get that, right? We take them to the hospital, we drop them off, we change somebody's life for the better. So to see people in a later date and find out that they're doing well, that you've affected their life in a good way, it has always been important, and a thing we don't get often enough, I don't think.
And the funny part of that call was my mother was a bit of a fire junkie, if you will, and I turned around and she had followed the fire engine to the call, and I was embarrassed. I was so mad, and I said, "Don't you ever do that again." And
I joined, like I said, Angel was probably 5, Joey was just 1 when we joined. They both grew up with being in the auxiliary, helping with the dishes, help serve food, help the ladies just took them in under their wings and just helped raise them. That's what they did, is they helped raise my children.
But I see like Cheech and Eugene, and they'll hug you and they'll say, "Hey man, how's it going?" And like Cheech worked with my brother Bubba, thought the world of him, and that makes me feel good. That they talk about other people that aren't even here, and they'll say they miss them and stuff. It is a brotherhood.
I made friends quickly. You learn to trust people with your life, and they trust you. So with that comes a sense of brotherhood, right? That I can depend on you, you can depend on me, and then we have good times and we have bad times, just like any other family.
Dad joined in 1951 till 2005, so I guess that was 54 years if I'm adding it up correctly. So a lot of fun growing up in the fire service. It was pretty much our life.
They would have bull roast, crab feast, fundraisers at the firehouse, and I used to go up with my dad and early in the morning and help do things. We'd set up chairs, we'd set up tables. Wasn't old enough to be a member, couldn't ride the equipment, but they didn't have a problem with us. I remember we used to peel potatoes, get the crabs ready, pick up the trash. It was just being there because I wanted to be a part of the fire.
Help with dinners.
Help with dinners. They had dinners. Just wanted to be there. And my goal, or at the time, was I eventually want to get into the fire department.
Company picnics. We've had them at different places. We've had them down at Flying Point Park, where they brought their families and just spent time eating crabs and food and more food and crabs, and just enjoyed away from here, being a family someplace else rather than doing this.
There were some neat things growing up. I remember at the old station when one of their biggest fundraisers was the bull and oyster roast. It really wasn't heard of, and back in the 60s and 70s, they were fun. And we loved when the older gentlemen would run the big six. The younger guys would do the steaming of the oysters, and that's where I like, because the oysters steam were good, how they would do it, and then we would sneak in a little cup of beer or something like that off the beer truck, and it was a member, Flurry Lachlan was his name, Joe Lachlan, him and his father owned a distributing place for Miller Beer, and that was kind of cool. He would have the truck there. It was like a connection all around, and I always remember they always had the same band, and they always played Proud Mary from CCR, and they did a great job at that song. But
bringing our actual families, there too, and having fun and eating crabs and cooking out and stuff.
I think the most fun thing is like carrying on at the firehouse and joking around and practical joking and things like that. Getting together, relaxing and having fun like that.
The brotherhood part of the fire department I truly believe it is. I don't see some of these guys for years, and they'll still talk to me. They're still friendly. They want to know things, how things are going. I mean, Rick Hampton and Joe Tolliver, Steve Pennington, Chris Hoffmeister, Ken Vanderweel. We all went through. We were on calls together. Eugene Meadows. You learned from them. You cried with them. You got in fights with them. We had a great time at Ocean City, and I'm leaving a lot of names out, but they're good people. They're good in their heart and soul.
The family atmosphere in the station and the camaraderie that goes on within the station, we might not be happy with each other, but we love each other and we're there for each other.
I hate to use the word club, but it seemed like a club back then. The meeting, we had 2 meetings a month. Not sure what the purpose for 2, but it seemed like at the end of every meeting was the reason for coming, and the guys played cards the rest of the night. So that was kind of an excuse to get out of the house.
And then I met a lot of my friends, and Andersons, Jerry Anderson, Senior and Junior, and Steve Anderson, and Miss Ruth, and it was all family.
I made a lot of friends, and the highlight of riding here was definitely the Friday night crew. I had a bunch of people that we all rode together with. We brought new people in, and we just had a really good time. We always took first calls, but we spent a lot of time at Starbucks or someplace to eat. So that was probably the highlight of being in Abingdon.
You got a pretty strong bond with a lot of people here. I've made a lot of friends over the years, and that's kind of what helps push me along. I know I have people here that are like family to me now. I've been with them for 10 years, so that's one thing that's always helped me through. You don't come here because it's a workplace. You come here because you enjoy spending time with these people you've met and grown with the past 10 years. I mean, that's kind of what really keeps you going, is that relationship you've built.
The food trucks, that type of stuff. So there's a lot of other stuff that a lot of people don't see, that it's all part of this.
I think it's important that through the years, different members, different generations have called the stations different things. Like the Willoughby Beach station now says the Edgewood station on it. It doesn't say Willoughby Beach, right? But those who rode out of there for a very long time just called it the beach. That was, I think it's important to understand that we are one company, right? We have technically 3 stations, but I think it's perfectly acceptable, and I always encouraged it, for each station to have their own identity. Whether that be something different with their patch, the way that they might have, the nickname they had for the station. Like the young guys years ago used to call this place, House 1, the Fort, right? And they would put a 4 with an RT after it. And so I think that's very important, that we're all one team, one fight, but at the same time we all have our own little identity and niches at their individual station.
They were close. It kind of sucks, but you might have a crew. That's a fire. Sorry.
See you, buddy. Respond to Engine Beach. Station 12 Edgewood doing engine. Ford dwelling fire. 807 East Ridge Road between Clarkson Drive and Beeson Court. 12 group E over 6, 1852.
Alright, I'm back. So, as you can see, that's pretty much how it goes. We're sitting here talking, and then next thing you know, bells go off, and you gotta roll out the door.
The more we get out there, the more that people will see us and know us, and if it turns out that they send $1 in, that's fine. If they turn out that they just want to bring their kids over to see us, that's fine too. It's just that we're out there to help. We're part of the community.
Joining the fire service is kind of like an impulse purchase. You know, when you're in the grocery line, it's like, ooh, M&Ms, right? Somewhere along the line, whether they see us out or they see us at a community event or we show up at their house to help with their emergency, they say, hey, I'm going to join the fire department.
Chick-fil-A, they invited us down. We had the truck down there, and I was doing push-ups with the Chick-fil-A cow.
Public Safety Day at Walmart, and we would have all of our apparatus go there, and it was a big public relation thing.
We do summer camps for children, so they can come in here and see what we do.
Christmas time, we used to have a couple members that would dress up as Santa Claus.
The Santa detail.
We'd go through the developments, and in the evenings, blow the siren lights, the kids would come running out.
All of it is worthwhile because you see the kids and the parents and how happy it makes them. We couldn't stop doing it. It just can't.
I enjoyed a lot of the open houses and talking to the kids that would come through and showing them the fire apparatus and showing them how the hoses work and how this works. And
we do the touch a truck at St. Francis, and it's just getting into the community, and you're letting the community know your firefighters, your first responders that can be coming to your house. So I believe you're on a more personal level with them.
Open house is always fun because then the community gets to come in and we get to share our, fire department with the community, and we get to hold hands-only CPR, or like when Mike Wright used to do the grease fires, demonstration and stuff. And I think the community really enjoys that.
Recently, I have done some stuff with Catholic Charities, helping them understand what's involved when they call, from the start of the 911 call to when we get there to when we leave. In some ways to help them help us, but the bigger picture so that they understand what's actually happening.
Enjoyed the parades.
Parades all summertime. We would go to parades all over Bel Air, Cecil County. I passed out on the back of a fire truck on a parade in Joppatown, and we're standing on the back, and I felt it coming, and I can remember taking my hands and locking it on the bar because I did not want to fall. And I can remember two guys saying, "What's wrong with Roy? Look at Roy. He don't look right." And the next thing I knew, I was in the back of an ambulance.
Firehouse tours, right? Bringing people that want to come into the firehouse for whatever reason, whether it's a business that wants to come in and understand what we do better or see what we have to offer, to a family that has a birthday party for their little kid. And it's typically a bunch of little kids and their friends and things like that, but there's always a bunch of adult family members that come with them.
Right down the street right here at the church, they have a touch a truck thing that we've been involved in, and we've done that not only at the church but a couple of different places. And that gives a chance for the community to come out and get to go over our piece of equipment, look at it, and us explain what it does. And it's interesting, some of the responses you get from it, because people don't know all of it.
Then, of course, we have the Sunday breakfast that we did for many years. Brought a lot of people in from the community that otherwise never would have known Abingdon Fire Company would have existed, never would have seen our equipment, or had a chance to meet fire service members in situations other than emergencies, such as medical calls at the house, that sort of thing.
I love it when I get to teach first aid to the Boy Scouts or to the Girl Scouts, or when I get to go to the elementary school and teach first graders hand-only CPR, because even though they're little, they still understand it and they still get it.
So after about 15 years of teaching now, now I've taken over, I'm running the program, and I'm not just doing people in the firehouse, but I have at least once a month a class for the community, nurses and healthcare providers, people that need it for their take care of their children, that type of thing. So I'll have a group of people in there, and sometimes 3 to 10 people or 15 people, and we do CPR. And it's significant because you never know what's going to happen if somebody falls out in front of you, and if you know CPR, at least the compressions, you have a chance of saving that life.
The one thing I always enjoy, it's, we go out, grab a bite to eat or something, and there's always that one little kid that just wants to see the fire engine. And then I go back to think when I was that little kid, and all I wanted to do was just see that fire engine. It's like I'm reliving in my younger years with that. it's nice to see you made some kid's day just by simply opening up that door, letting them sit in the engine, the truck, whatever it may be. And, you know, it really helps build that bond with the community to let them know, like, hey, we're here for you guys.
You've actually had, by going out to these different things, people come and say, you know what, I always wanted to be a fireman. I always wanted to ride one of those fire engines. So that's the impact that you're making on the community, and it's also an investment to our future.
When we do things that, like breakfast and anything that we have as fundraising events, and they can see us off of the equipment, you know, they see us just as regular people, and and we can talk to them and explain to them what we do. It makes it a little easier for them to know, hey, I might be able to help out with that. I might be able to help with fundraising. I might be able to help with, say, you know, cooking. I love to cook.
Schools is a big thing, going out during Public Safety Week or talking to the children.
Especially for career day. I've been to all of my kids' career days as an EMT or paramedic, and the one thing the children love is the EKG monitor and hooking them up with all the little stickers so that they can get a printout of their heartbeat to take home to mom, dad, or caregiver, and they absolutely love that. And it's just, it opens them up to the possibilities of what they could be when they grow up, and I love doing that. So that's one of the best highlights.
For years, my daughters went to preschool, and I kind of got pulled in and to do the firefighter safety day there, and I ended up doing that for that school probably 10 years, so additional 6 years after my girls were done there, I still went and did that because I really enjoyed it. I had fun. It was nice to go in and teach the kids a little fire safety.
Kitty Academy over in Woodsdale, and yeah, hearing their questions turn into stories, especially the younger kids. I've never had a bad time. Like it makes me laugh. It keeps me, you know, keeps me going. You know, sometimes the teachers will try to stop them and like, no, let him go. Like it's important to him, you know, to tell a story. You know, about a time that he had to call 911, or they had smoke, or their smoke detector was going off because dad can't cook, or mom couldn't cook, or stuff like that. I mean, their stories, I mean, just, you know, span the spectrum, right? And to get the questions from them and not only be able to give them answers, but give them answers in a way that they will understand. Chief Steve Hinch's grandson was in that class. So he was actually telling me about things from our ladder truck. So he was explaining me, you know, things. So I almost let him come up and talk, because he loves fire trucks. So,
you know, when we go to a school and the kids get to climb through the fire engine and touch things and ask questions, and we give them the little plastic helmets, that's good stuff. They love it, and I think most of us love it because, you know, we were a kid once and fire engines are cool.
We always took an engine down at Deerfield Elementary School.
Let them see what a firefighter looks like with all his gear on.
And I would start from where I'm in civilian clothes, and I would put on the bunker pants. I put on my coat. Nice, slow transition.
Showed them what the firefighters look like with full gear on, breathing air.
And then I would say, okay, this is when I'm going to start sounding like Darth Vader.
And we always told them, if you hear us breathing, we sound like Darth Vader.
Let them know, hey, just because I sound like Darth Vader doesn't mean I am Darth Vader.
Don't be afraid when you hear it. It's not Darth Vader, it's just the firefighters coming in, come find us. And it was good for the kids when we do that. And it teaches them not to be afraid of the firefighters coming in to get them out, back to their families.
That was probably the most heartfelt experience in the fire service for me.
And just looking at the kids' smiles and the teachers, it was great that we're getting the word out and trying to teach the kids not to be afraid of us coming in when you hear Darth Vader coming in. And that's what I tell the kids. Don't be afraid. It's not Darth Vader.
They love it. They love it. They love to put the helmet on. They love to put your boots and everything on. They love it.
I think one of the biggest aspects of the volunteer service is we have to know where we were
to know where we're going to go.
The big thing is that the leadership has to listen to everybody, because the old guys, have the experience, they have the skills, but the new guys have good ideas. They know the new technology that most of us old guys have trouble dealing with. So we need to make it a unified group of people, young and old, to make sure that everything works together.
Have patience. Learn from history. Look back. Ask the old guys. Ask them how it was done, or what they might think could be different. Don't think just because, well, you're old, don't know this is how we do things. And just because this is how we've always done it, doesn't mean that's the right way to do it.
Don't give up. It's very easy to get mired down in a lot of things in the fire service. I myself have taken some time off here and there. Just threw my hands up and said I've had enough. I've had enough doesn't mean I quit, right? So maybe just hit pause for a little bit, balance things out in your life, and you re-engage. But I'd say don't give up, because the reward at the end is far worth it.
We need to be training the younger generation, so when it's time for them to step up, they will already have an idea of everything that's going on.
Time management, support from family. None of this would be possible for me to do if I didn't have the support.
Share as much knowledge as you can, because it goes both ways. An old fireman's job is to make a young fireman an old fireman at the end of the day. So,
realize that they're volunteers and that they are giving probably as much as they can at this point in time. And so we need to show them some grace and some leniency, and realize that some help is better than none.
Consider people's lives. Some people get caught up in all they can think about is the fire department, and they forget that people have a life outside of the fire department, and sometimes that life is more important and takes precedence over them being able to volunteer here at the fire company. So I think sometimes the guy's got to sit down or sit back and think, wow, so-and-so's not been around, instead of belittling that person the next time I see him. Maybe go up to him and say, hey man, how's everything going? You got any issues? You need help anything? Can I get you anything? Consider that. I mean, just be kind and considerate of their members. That's what's going to keep people here, is that, the leadership being kind to people, I think.
I miss riding. I wish I could do both. I would give anything to go back on the fire side, but I also like to keep the administrative side. That's where you really make sound, true decisions to put us in a different place, Abingdon. There's a lot more decision making on the second floor than there is on the operations floor.
It's like, who's coming up next? Who do you see that has the ability? Not always the time. Somebody who has a ton of free time isn't always the best candidate. Somebody who has a ton of classes isn't always the best candidate. But that person that you see something in that knows how to handle people and has a good head on their shoulders to stay cool and calm in situations where other people wouldn't.
Probably the biggest thing that I can remember out of it is learning to deal with people in different situations, and understanding from my perspective that anybody who was willing to help, we would take their help, because you had so many things to do. There was not enough time to do it. You have your normal job, you have your family, you had all these things, and when somebody was good at something or they were willing to help with something, you had to take advantage of everything everybody had to offer to bring the team together and keep the team meeting the needs of the community and all those other challenges that we were facing.
I want you to know that you don't have to have a title to lead, okay? Just because you have an officer title doesn't make you a leader. Helping people, being there, for your fellow volunteer to help them through class or to help them during training, you know, to give them advice if they ask you a question, whether it's fire or EMS related or not, that makes a leader.
I say be open. Be open to everyone's opinion and listen. The generations change, the thinking change, what people have to offer. Everyone's unique in their own way. Everyone has something to offer.
You know, they say hundreds of years of history unimpeded by progress. Can't have it that way.
You have to make sure that you teach those coming behind you, right? Mentor them, show them the way. You don't want to end up with people who are getting a set of keys to the firehouse and a new helmet, right, with no clue what to do, and then having them learn their way.
This is something I've struggled with a long time, but as you get older, you realize that, you know, you have one mouth and two ears for a reason. You listen more to people that have been there and done that, and ask questions. Don't pretend like you know what you're doing and give a bunch of orders or think that it's going to be any different. I think one of the things that is very different that you find out the longer you're in these positions and the more responsibility you have is that you'll take any advice that anybody has to give, and it's your job to kind of go through the information and come up with the pieces that are appropriate for the situation that you're asking advice for, because nobody has all the answers. And I think that's probably the lesson is, you know, you got to pay attention to the other people that are around you that have been there and done that, and go to training. I can't speak more about that. Is, you know, you're going to be exposed to things outside of your direct environment when you go to training, and that is a big part of what made the senior officer successful throughout the years. Was go to training in different places and hear what different people have to say. And one thing I learned was everybody thinks that their specific environment is one-off, but what you find out is it's the same everywhere.
Think about the old guy that's sitting over there, the real quiet one that's kind of grinning at you and kind of making fun of you. He might have a little bit of information for you, and then for the older guy, that younger guy might have seen something and know more about technology and all this other stuff than he'll ever think about. It's called diversity, and it all works together.
Might not necessarily agree with everyone, but listen and make everyone feel welcome. Make them feel important. Make them feel that we want them here. Make them feel that they have a seat at the table.
I view Abingdon as a family. I don't view it as House 1 and House 3. I don't view it as fire and EMS. I view it as Abingdon Fire Company. I've always viewed it that way. And I know that there's a lot of people that don't necessarily view it that way, whether they say they do or not. We're all here for the common good of the community. We all are here to help each other do that service. And we're a team, and we all play an integral part of that. And we all have, you know, our place. And to make it work and flow, we need each other. Through good times and bad, we are Abingdon. And we're that family, and we just need to realize that and be there for each other regardless. So.
Work and family are the utmost important. You have to remember that. Unfortunately, I've seen this place cause some real family problems because they've put this before family. You cannot. This is a volunteer, and that's what I would tell anybody coming in. Take care of your job, take care of your family, and then you can take care of, being a volunteer here.
What I would recommend is something I tell everybody: knowledge. Learn everything you can. Study everything you can. Once you have that knowledge, they can't take it away from you. Be open-minded. Listen to what people say. You don't have to agree with everything, but learn and listen to other people's opinions.
Well, I think regardless of what your capacity is at Abingdon Fire Company, do your best, make decisions that are in the best interest of the organization and not yourself.
Even as we go to calls and come back, most people do not realize we are a volunteer organization.
Here's a man and a lady, but Dad, what a lot of people think, they think this was Dad's career. This was Dad's job, and it wasn't. This was all volunteer, 100% of it. He still owned a business and kept that business running well, but this was his passion. And you want to see more of that, that passion, and he did it for all the right things, not for pridefulness and ego and stuff. He did it because he truly loved the fire service and he wanted to make it better.
Trying to encourage people to spend time volunteering is one of the big efforts that I think our people can do. Because a lot of people are unaware that the fire and EMS service in the county still has a lot of volunteer activity. So getting people to volunteer into that is important. And also, we've been involved in the cadet program. It can actually become a career for many people, and it's actually a good career.
I think the one thing I like to stress to the community, people don't see the background and everything else, is we are volunteer. A lot of people don't know that. They think because we got these pretty engines and all this stuff and we show up when 911's called.
Family values and stuff, I think if you want a good foundation to your family, I think two places to start at is church and the fire and EMS services. Volunteer, what better way to help your community than helping your community by their times of tribulation and problems, and what a great way to help your community out at their worst time.
Volunteerism as a whole, not just in our area but throughout the country, is on the decline. But also there's a different kind of volunteer. The volunteer when I joined and 30, 40 years ago did everything, right? If you were cutting your grass, you would stop cutting your grass and run to the firehouse when you got a call. Now it's more of, I can't really call it a hobby, but people are so pressed for time with working 2 or 3 jobs, having children, having other obligations, that they can't just drop everything and run to the firehouse every time there's a call. So those volunteers maybe don't do what previous volunteers did, but they do it in smaller blocks, so we need more of them.
And the neat part about it is that the fire service it's so diverse. It encompasses everybody. There's extremely wealthy people that you would never know, and there are people that are just making ends meet week to week, but yet it's the only service in the world where everybody, other than a church, that everybody comes together and for one cause.
I still want to see the volunteer fire company preserved, and I know that our population is growing, and I know it's hard to respond to every call. There's a lot of calls today that I hear, and I still monitor the frequency and sort of hear daily or nightly what goes on, the type of calls they respond to. There's a lot of them today that we didn't have that type of call, but I don't know how still being volunteers and respond to the volume of calls, but yet I just encourage the people, the community, to be more involved and with the volunteer spirit in mind, to keep that going.
I guess you have to look at it as, and I think you have to look at it as almost like a hobby, right? You make time to go fishing, you make time to go hunting, you make time to do the bowling or things like that. This is ours. This is our hunting, fishing, and then if you have extra time to do that extra stuff, then you can do that. But this is our hunting, fishing, bowling, baseball, whatever time, instead of doing that other stuff. We make time for this because this is what we do.
You know, I just want the community to know that the fire departments need your support, you know. I know they have food trucks here at Abingdon. Come and support that. If they have fundraisers, come and support that. If they have bingos or bull roasts, because that money helps them pay for the equipment, helps them pay for the engine, helps pay for the training.
We were 100% volunteers. And when you respond to their homes, sometimes the homeowners will have an attitude a little bit like, what took you so long? You know, and you just say, well, man, we're a volunteer service. We got here as fast as we can.
The fire department, volunteer fire department specifically, well, no, just fire departments in general, have always kind of been like a hub of the community, right? You know, if people need help to go to the firehouse. And I still see that to this day, you know, no matter how trivial it might be to us, right, it's important to them. Going on community details or in my time as chief meeting with different community leaders has given me, it keeps that in focus, right, and given me the opportunity to tell our story, you know, and why we're important to the community and why the community is important to us, you know, not just for fundraising, but just their support in general. To know that their fire company cares about them and we're here to help them.
We're no different. Again, the chief is more the chief operating officer, handles the calls, the emergencies, readiness and training and all that stuff like that. Then you have the money side or the business side of the fire company, which is the president and the vice presidents. And then you have the oversight of the board of directors. So we're no different than most large corporations. We several $1 million operating budget. We're accountable to the citizens. We're accountable to the county. We're accountable to the other fire companies and everybody that's along the way.
You know, it's just, I tell you, to be honest with you, it's just very rewarding of what I got from the fire service. We volunteered and we did this. For me, it was rewarding to help somebody in trouble. Didn't matter what their trouble was, that's their darkest day, and we're there to help them. You know, I mean, that's what it's about.
A lot of people don't realize that probably about 80% of the United States of America is volunteer service. It's a valuable service. It saves the communities millions and millions of dollars. It has for years. It's hard to get volunteers. It's hard to maintain the volunteers that you do get because it is a job that is very stressful, physically and emotionally. There's a burnout rate. I'd like the community to know that all these people, volunteers in this whole county, especially at Abingdon Fire Company, they care about you. If they didn't, they wouldn't get up in the middle of the night. They wouldn't sit up here and wait for calls. They wouldn't go through all this training. Deep down, whether they admit it or not, they're doing it for the love and the passion of their community and their fellow citizens.
The governments have to look into how to not pay but reward these members that have put in so many hours, so many years into this system that's saving the taxpayers millions and millions of dollars, and they need to start working together to find a realistic goal for the future of the volunteer service. It's just going to have to take a lot more political support to save what is so wonderful about this county, and that's the volunteer system. Even though it's cracked in many places, but if they want to save the taxpayers money, they'll support these companies more and more and stop making it political.
Like any other nonprofit volunteer organization, we always need help. We can't have enough help. And you know, if you're a trained firefighter or you're a trained EMT or paramedic, we can use your help. If you can give us 10, 20 hours a month, wonderful, because if we all gave 10 or 20 hours a month, we wouldn't have the staffing issues that we sometimes face today. Every time we interact with the public, we want it to be positive. We want them to walk away from it thinking, hey, those are the good guys. Those are the guys who we call in our maybe the worst moment of our lives because we need help.
Really, what it's going to take is people got to realize it's not how it was back in the day. Things are changing. The population's changing. We are a growing community. I mean, there is new development going up. There's all these new people coming in, and we're just not retaining the members. We're not getting that membership. Times have changed. We really need to take that step forward and get the younger generation moving up to where our board is now. The older members, we got to have a younger crowd start coming in. We really need the community support. We need the community to start helping out. Even if you can come give us, 12 hours a month. We don't ask for much, but we do need you. We need the community support as much as we like to support the community. So if you can give us, 12 hours a month, 15 hours a month, whatever it may be, we will take it. Whether you want to be a firefighter, an EMT, or if you just want to help down in the hall, we will take you wherever we can use you, because we need the help tremendously. And I think in order to continue that, we need to keep moving forward. We need younger people to join. We need more 16-year-olds like I was, wanting to just run into a fire. We definitely do. I mean, you won't regret it. It is something I've enjoyed the past 10 years.
We need your support. And we appreciate your support. And that could be monetarily. That could be as a volunteer. It could be in many different aspects, but we're here to serve you, and we enjoy doing it, and we appreciate any support you can give us.
We've always had the property in the Riverside area to build a new station, and I'm glad that I was a part to help make some of those decisions to be able to build that station in Riverside.
I'm just glad that I still can be a part of it and watch these younger guys come up and be officers and leaders, and maybe I'll help out when I can.
I still love riding the fire truck. Right? That's kind of my thing. I like going down the road. I like helping people. There's something special about riding a fire truck at 3 in the morning. I can't explain it, but it's a reward mechanism for me.
When I started my fire service career, I never thought that I would be here. I actually rode my last active ambulance call when I was 77 years old. I used to think that if I got there at 60, I would be, would be lucky to be still riding. It's been a wonderful ride, and I want to keep on doing it, keep on doing what I can for the fire service as long as I can. And I would tell everybody that's involved to make the commitment and keep going. So.
Come join. It is a great place to be. If you're the type of person that wants to give back, this is the place to be. I think give it a try. You'd like it.
We're here for you 24/7, 365, and it has been a pleasure to serve you. I've only been serving you for 22 years, but it's been a pleasure over this 100-year time period to serve the community of Abingdon and the surrounding areas.
I feel that I was very fortunate that I had people that I could look up to. Cubby, Steve Pennington, and even, Joe Tolliver, and, those guys, just sitting down on the floor to listen to them tell stories. Or, well, hey, this is how we used to do it, but, and then blending that with what I feel is right. But I feel like the up-and-comers, like, never forget where you came from, right? Never forget that you are a volunteer, right? The people who are under you are also volunteers.
When you're stuck together for all those hours and you live together for all that time, it's no different than being at home. It's like, you know, if there's 5 other guys and 2 girls, those are all brothers and sisters, and it's no different than what goes on at home. One day you're the best friend in the world, the next day you don't want to be in the same room with the person, and you're sitting down eating dinner, and one guy's got to tell the other guy to be quiet, or whatever's going on. It's no different, and that speaks volumes for all these different people coming together with a common goal and solving people's worst days.
When you enjoy doing what you're doing, it's not hard to do, you know, and it's fun to be out there helping people in their need, knowing that that's what we're coming to do. And I've enjoyed doing that for many years, and we'll see how much longer I have to do it, you know. But it's been fun.
So, you know, if that seems like something that might interest you, come join. Because that's how it is, you know, we're going to mess around with each other, but when the bells go off, we have to do what we got to do. At the end of the day, you're going to see really messed up things, but at the same time, you're going to build a bond with people you never would have imagined. So if I could say anything to the younger generation, it would be to do this. I definitely would recommend it. At least do it for a year, 2 years. Get your feet wet, you know, because I wouldn't have thought 10 years later I'd still be here. But it's moments like that that keep me around, and, you know, the bond I have with the people here that I enjoy. So to the younger generation, sign up today, get your Fire One, come run into fires with me. It's a great time.
Abingdon Fire Company has been, as far as our family, has been a big part of it. Between my brother Dale, who joined first, then Joe joined next, then I joined, then Dale's son Steve joined, then my daughter Angel joined, then Dale's daughter Robin joined, then my son Joey joined. So, you know, from one person, Dale, decided to join, affected our family completely, because my kids grew up here. His kids grew up here. And his kids are still here, and so are mine. So it's been a great life. They were influenced by the people who came before them, or like older people like Charlie Riley, like Jerry Anderson, those people, Lou Espy especially. Those people affected Joe and I very much, but they also affected my children. They taught my children how to be a great volunteer. They told them stories of things from long ago. They did a great job of helping me raise my children.
Never think you're the smartest man in the room, because you're probably not. Just because members are older don't mean that they don't have anything to give. And just take your time and don't lose focus of what's important.
We always need volunteers, and it's never going to stop. And we do need the county to fund us, because we're not getting the EMS billing that we was getting on our own. So we need volunteers. The door is always open, and the county, we need your help.
And grateful. I'm grateful that I've been able to do this and continue to do this. And I guess grateful for this family. Yeah.
I hope that this is there for everybody. I hope the opportunity for people to join a company like I did and have a lifelong experience the way I did will always be there. I would hope people would drive to continue that long after I'm gone, because I hope everybody gets a chance to do what I did for the last 40 plus years.
It has been an honor to serve Abingdon Fire Company's 100 years of service celebration. I'd like to thank everyone who helped me along the way, and I'd like to thank the community for their support.